May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Frequently in the morning over that first cup of coffee, I will ask my wife, Shelley, what she has on tap for the day. I'll ask her, what's your plan? What's on your agenda? Oftentimes in the evening, I'll ask the same question, what's your plan for tonight? The question seems innocent enough, and often it is, because I really am interested in what's going on with her and her life, what she wants to do. But then there are those other times when I ask the question because I already have my own plans, my own agenda, and I'm just trying to figure out how to bring those plans about, how to get what I want. Will she participate in and support my agenda? That's the question behind my question. Now, when agendas come together without manipulation, amazing things can happen. Relationships deepen, love flourishes, energy, creativity flow. Life is abundant and rich, really all is well. However, when agendas collide, well, there can be great conflict. Whether spoken or unspoken, we all have our agendas. We each have that list of expectations, desires, things we want to do, ways we want to be. And at some level, our agendas describe who we are, what we are about. Really, the question is not whether we have agendas, we do. The question is whose agenda guides our lives. And I wonder if that's not the question at the heart of this morning's gospel. I wonder if colliding agendas are the reason for the conflict between Jesus and his own people. Further, I wonder if our own agendas don't sometimes collide with those of God. Jesus came to Nazareth, his hometown, with an agenda. Good news for the poor, release to the captive, sight for the blind, freedom for the oppressed. He came to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. It was the same agenda and prophecy as Isaiah's. However, that day, something was different. For its fulfillment was happening right in front of those people, in their hearing. And at first, it sounded great. And all spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth. The people loved it. Is not this Joseph's son? They recognized Jesus as one of their own. They knew him. He knew them. And they remember him back when. Hidden within their question, however, is an unspoken expectation, an agenda. If that's what he's going to do for them, just think how much more he'll do for us. The cultural norm and assumption was that Jesus, the hometown boy, would give deference to his own people. And why not? They gave him his start. They are the village that raised him as a child. They helped make him the man he was that day. And so at some level, they expect not just to be remembered, but to be repaid. It's not so different today. We expect those close to us to support us, to agree with us. Think about the news of the day This political season, folk often contribute to political campaigns, at least at those high levels, expecting to be remembered with a favor every now and then. And all of us, usually, well, we take care of our own, don't we, before we care for another. After all, family, whether by blood, ideology, or economics, has to stick together, we say. Well, with prophetic insight, Jesus unveils their agenda. Doubtless you will quote to me this proverb, "Doctor, cure yourself," and you will say, "Do here also in your hometown the things that we have heard you did at Capernaum." And he said, "Truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in the prophet's hometown. But the truth is, there were many widows in Israel in the time of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months. There was a severe famine over all the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them except to a widow at Zarephath in Sidon. There were also many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed, except Naaman the Syrian." I can imagine the people asking, why is he telling us about the great things God did for those outsiders, those foreigners? What about us? We're the chosen ones. It must have sounded as if one of their own had turned on them, as if Jesus had betrayed, rejected them. Really, that's the kind of talk that gets truth-tellers stoned and prophets killed. We are told that when they heard Jesus' words, they were filled with rage. They ran him out of town. They tried to throw him off a cliff. If you don't like the message, kill the messenger. Jesus has a vision for his ministry. The people have another, a different vision. And the people's own expectations have deafened them to the fulfillment of the scriptures. They're so caught up in their own agenda that they cannot hear, let alone participate in, God's agenda. What do you think? Does that ever happen in today's world? Does that ever happen in the Episcopal Church? Does that ever happen in this parish? Does that ever happen in our own lives? Despite our own agendas, Jesus is guided by the concerns of God and the scriptural prophecies that came before him. He will not let himself be co-opted by the people of Nazareth. And don't think that Nazareth is simply a geographical location, a town in Israel. For really, it's a way of being. It's a way of seeing others. It's a way of trying to control God. Anytime we privilege ourselves over another before God, Jesus will pass through our midst and go on his way. Anytime we see our group as more deserving than another of God's goodness and grace, Jesus will pass through our midst and go on his way. Anytime we feel entitled to the exclusion of others, to God's life and love, we are living in Nazareth. And Jesus will pass through our midst and go on his way. Jesus broke the bonds of kinship that day in Nazareth, not as a rejection of his hometown, but as the way of enlarging the kingdom. No one would be excluded. No one would receive special favors. No one would be left out. All are the recipients of the prophecy's fulfillment. We know that that's not always a popular agenda, and it's not always our agenda, but it is God's agenda, an agenda of love. So, what is your plan for the day? That's not me asking this time. That's a question that God asks each of us.